And welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Right now, very happy to welcome back to the show Representative Ilhan Omar, a Democrat representing Minnesota's 5th Congressional District, serves on the House Budget Committee, which is really important to talk about now, and House Education and Workforce Committee, Deputy Chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. And it's a night before Ramadan. You're not a Muslim was stirring, or there are a lot of Muslims stirring now.
Yeah.
So good to see you,
Ramadan
my friend.
Mubarak, everyone.
Just about. Yep. So how are you? How's everything?
I'm all right. I'm all right. Surviving the chaos.
I imagine some people can tolerate it differently. You've been through a lot. We've talked before when other members of Congress were crying in the first terms or really emotionally overwrought. You've been through a lot in life. I mean, it makes you stronger, doesn't it? I mean, it has to.
I mean, yeah, and fortunately, I've been through more than most Americans, so quite ready to battle a dictator as I had in my earlier years in life.
Very good. It's good training. So on Tuesdays, talking about the budget, the House Republicans passed their blueprint, and it calls for $4.5 trillion in tax cuts, primarily for the wealthy and their donors, and $2 trillion reduction in federal budget over a decade. You know, I saw your clip. You spoke on the House floor, very impassioned about this. What is your concerns, and what's the real world impact of this kind of ridiculous budget, outrageous budget?
Yeah, I mean, and not only are they proposing a $4.5 trillion in tax cuts for billionaires and foreign corporations, this will also add a $2 trillion to the debt of our nation. We also know that they are proposing $880 billion in cuts to Medicaid. That will have an impact in Minnesota to over 1 million people that reside in our state. They are looking at cuts to Social Security, to SNAP benefits, $230 billion. They directed the Ag Committee to cut. That's going to have a devastating impact on the most vulnerable. We're talking about children. We're talking about people with disabilities. We are talking about seniors. We're talking about nursing homes shutting down. We're talking about health centers, not just in urban areas, but in rural areas that are already devastated when it comes to healthcare access, being even more devastated. And we saw that yesterday with their, smash and grab. Elon Musk is now talking about maybe a 50% reduction to folks who work for the Social Security Administration. In Minnesota, we have a huge shortage already.
Mhm.
That's gonna mean delays in people getting their earned benefits. It's going to mean people not being able to pay their rent. It's going to mean on time. It's going to mean people not being able to buy food and have access to that. And we already know that, safety net programs that already exist, whether it's meals on wheels programs that help deliver meals for folks, or whether it is the food shelves that people sometimes rely on when they're short on cash to get food. Their grants are already cut off. And they're already seeing some challenges, and so those resources are also not going to be there for people. And so there is going to be these are not just numbers and dollars.
Yep.
This is going to have a real world impact on people's lives, and people are going to die.
You know, when we have people who are, for example, seniors who are waiting for the Social Security check or Medicare payment or Medicare approval, and if you have a problem and you call up, there's not going to be anyone there. That's the problem with these massive layoffs. It's going to be a skeleton crew everywhere, and they're going to work nonstop. And we know people work for the government, work really hard, but there's only so much that you can get out of people. And I'm really concerned for people. And I'm also concerned with Trump. Even yesterday said again a lie. There are people, they're over 200 years old and they're getting checks from Social Security. That's a lie. It's been
Yeah.
fact checked to death. Last week, he said 20 million people. He went through 20 million people out of the 70 million on Social Security are fraudulent. And
Yeah.
what concerns me is he doesn't need an act of Congress to have the Social Security administrator throw off millions of people and say they're all fraud when they're not. And then the burden's on you to call Social Security and no one's there to pick up and you don't get your money and you have to hire a lawyer. You've got the money. If you don't, you're really screwed. I'm really concerned that a very vulnerable community of senior citizens who rely on this money are not going to have their money. And Trump doesn't care. Musk doesn't care.
Yeah, I mean they've gotten really good at just, waking up every single day, and lining up the lies that they're going to tell the American people. Those lies can only survive for so long. We're not even going to need to fact check because we are going to see the real world impact that it is going to have on people. When we're seeing planes falling off the sky, we know that it is because of the FAA that was already dealing with understaffing is even more so going to deal with understaffing. When we see our parks, national parks, not more fires, we're gonna know it's because they fired the people who were supposed to manage it, prepare for it, and mitigate it. When we start to see people not receiving their checks due to benefits, we're going to know it's because there's no one there to push that button to make sure that that your money is arriving at your bank account in order for you to get food and to pay your rent if you're a senior. We know that healthcare centers, not just in my district but across Minnesota and across the country, that right now with Medicaid they're reimbursed, right? Something between 40% to 60%. They're already underwater in some of these facilities. They're already struggling to keep the doors open, and so it's going to mean that they're gonna have to shut down. Huge departments, at least, are going to shut down. So this is not just dollars and cents that we are talking about. This is people and their lives that are going to be impacted.
And I'm telling Representative Ilhan Omar, you know, when I take a step back, I read a lot about politics, but also business stuff and the economy. Today Donald Trump just announced that the tariffs on Canada and Mexico are going to affect next week, 25%. And he's upping the China tariff from 10% to 20%. Those are inflationary. Everyone knows it. Even he could say it's not. Polling shows, even Republicans know it's inflationary. We already have high inflation from the latest report. Today we had the filings of new unemployment claims. They were much higher than expected. You have consumer confidence down. Consumer sentiment is down. And it doesn't make sense to me. And you're on the budget committee. Maybe you can help me make sense of it. I mean, is it about doing tariffs to get revenue to justify the tax cut for the wealthy? Or is this a guy run by ego and there's no strategy whatsoever and it's just whimsical? And the result is average Americans, especially working class, pay the price for this guy who's got no strategy. It's clear just winging it.
Yeah. No, I mean, tariffs are a strategic tool, and it is supposed to work with the strategy. There's always, long research, thoughtful research that goes into when and how to increase tariffs, right? What products to put tariffs on, what countries, and markets we should put tariffs on. But just blanketed, like where how does he come up with the 25%, right? What does that mean in the real world for Americans and for them accessing the resources they need? And what does it mean for the trade partners and states that rely on trade with Canada? For us in Minnesota, we have $22 billion in trade with Canada. Right, that's our farmers with corn and wheat that are going to see the real impact of that. We also, just in my own district, it's over $600 million.
Wow.
So our economy is going to be impacted in Minnesota, and Minnesota's fifth, but it also is going to impact jobs. Because if some of the plants that we have shut down, and we lose those jobs, that's more people that are going to need support from the government.
It's And I wonder if I look at the state by state impact, does it hurt more blue states? But I really think when you're doing Canada and Mexico, it affects every state,
Yeah.
to be honest, because they're our biggest trading partners. They're right here. And he even said today we might do 25% on EU.
I
And
mean, when he first announced the tariffs, the first people who started to lose their minds were the folks in Kentucky because bourbon.
right,
It's a huge economy in Kentucky, and it employs a great deal of people, and so those are jobs that are lost. That's money that is going to be impacted, and it's going to hit Middle America. It's gonna hit all over America, and people are going to feel it.
very much so. So when you're back in your district, what are people saying to you about what's going on? It's different. It feels different in the first term. That was really kind of focused on a few things. We had the Muslim ban going on, a few other things. This is a broad assault on everything. So I'm just curious, what do voters, your constituents, say to you about how they feel?
Yeah, I mean, I hold a monthly town hall every month. I've been doing it since I came to Congress, and we just did February's we were back home for the district week, and it was the first time I had an overflow room. The attendance was overwhelming for us to manage. And people are talking about the same things that we're talking about. They're talking about, where are my guarantees on, having my Social Security check arrive on time. People are talking about the different grants that support research and other things, and how that's going to impact their family members that might have been in that cancer treatment trial. People were talking to us about the education cuts. What does that mean for a
Right.
state already that is dealing with some challenges in fully funding our public schools? Folks were talking about the different projects in regards to transportation, and asking, are those projects going to be funded? Is it going to finish? We had people talking about, pollution mitigation. That was in the Inflation Reduction Act, where we had a huge investment addressing the climate crisis. Those dollars are no longer coming, and so just the slew of concern for folks, because the folks in my district and in my state understand what it means for us to have a sensible federal government that is able to provide the resources that they need in a
Mhm.
timely fashion. That is what efficiency means for that. When I need, this from my federal government, am I able to get it? And that question is no longer yes. And that is of a concern for a lot of folks.
And it's interesting to hear what you were hearing and the feedback voters in your district versus a slew of Republican districts from Rich McCormick to others across the nation where they were getting yelled at.
Yeah.
And Congressman Alford's like, well, God's got a plan for you. And then he was even kind of strident. He goes, well, you don't have a Supreme Court seat. It's not like you have this job for life. I'm like, wow, the callousness of taking jobs away from working class Americans who wanted to work for our government because they want to be public servants in their own way, and to be gleeful about taking away their job or being callous about it is outrageous. So are you here? I don't know if you talk to Republicans in the House much, but is there scuttlebutt? I mean, are they like, oh, we're concerned about this? Like, what can you share?
Yeah, I mean, internally, for folks are concerned, not only for the way in which I think, Elon is carrying out the work of Doge. They don't see it as efficient. They don't see, or at least no one has shown us actual fraud, because if there is fraud that they're discovering, like, why aren't people going to jail? People go to jail for fraud. They get investigated, and and they know that the impact that it is having on their constituents, but they are cowards, right? These people don't have a backbone. They're too scared to stand up to their master, the criminal that's in the White House. And they're definitely scared of the billionaire who bought himself a seat as the president's boss. Uh, they're afraid that he is going to primary them and use the billions of dollars that he's gotten from our government and challenge them.
And things are going so badly for Elon Musk today. Earlier, I'm not sure if you're a member of Congress, you're busy. He literally posted on X, there's a shortage of top-notch air traffic controllers. If you have retired but are open to returning to work, please consider doing so. How about you don't fire as many as you did?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and is this some kind of thing? Retired in his mind means white air traffic controllers and not his view of DEI air traffic controllers. Like, I have no idea what's going on there with a guy born and raised in apartheid. I can't figure it out yet, but something's unnerving about him. So you've got,
I mean, and the retirement thing for air traffic controllers is also, again, it just shows how much he doesn't know. I know people talk about him as a genius, but to me, I think he's probably one of the dumbest, luckiest people to exist on this earth. The retirement age for air traffic controllers is 55 or 25 years of service. So unless we raise their retirement age, if they retire, they're not coming back, right? Like they were set to retire. And it is a taxing job. Like on Friday, I went to the FAA in the Minneapolis St. Paul airport to check in on air traffic controllers. What we learned is that, they're at 87% capacity. It takes 3 years for somebody to be onboarded to be fully certified in all the equipment and become self-sufficient in order for them to be an air traffic controller. They have 11 people in that pipeline, but they're also set to have more than that in retirement. So they're not going to be at 100% capacity anytime soon. We also know that for the smaller airports, whether it's Crystal that's in my district or Duluth or others, that's also true. They're at 60% capacity, at 70% capacity. Some are at 40% capacity. What they're also firing is not just air traffic controllers. They're firing the people who support them. So technicians, when their equipment goes down, the people who make sure that their equipment is up and running so that they can actually direct the flights on where to go. One of the air traffic controllers was telling me how, their radar shows them which flights are coming in, which flights are outbound, and which ones are inbound. What they said, when it goes down, someone has to physically find the parts and replace them and turn it back on. But in the meantime, they rely on their eyes and what they're able to see. In a state like Minnesota, when it's snowing, the visibility doesn't exist. And we actually saw that in Chicago a couple of days ago, where they, the flights themselves had to decide how to avoid collision. And this is serious. These are people's lives. And people will die if we don't have not just the right people, but enough people to be able to do the work.
I've never had more of a concern. Look, we inherently all have a little concern about flying. That's just life. We're normal people, but this is a different level. And they did the big
tell me
buyout.
about it. I'm on a flight twice a week.
Right. So, and don't forget, they did the buyout where people voluntarily took 70,000 people from different branches of the government, took the buyout that they offered. Now they're gone. They don't have to go to work, but they get paid through September or October. So, last thing I want to touch on a foreign policy issue, and that's Ukraine. And Donald Trump it looks like to me he's shaking down Ukraine in the middle of a war to take their resources and assets and not even providing a guarantee. Like if we're going to say Ukraine's like, look, we're fine with this. You can have this percentage of revenue from our resources, our minerals. If you're going to give us a guarantee, ironclad guarantee that if Russia ever invades again, you're there for us. But we're not doing that. It really seems to me that in the middle of a war, Donald Trump is trying to take revenue from a country that is so vulnerable. Am I
Yeah,
wrong?
I
Am I
mean,
missing something?
he's never found a dictator that he wasn't willing to kneel under. And he is doing Russia's bidding, right? Like he wants to make sure that the confidence of Ukraine and its people is weakened.
Mhm.
He wants to make them feel like it's inevitable that they are going to lose this war. He wants to signal to them that an ally who supported them will not be there, and he wants to make it clear, that whatever resources that they have, that they've been willing to say, we have people, we're gonna fight to protect the sovereignty of our nation. We have minerals that we want to trade, and work with the United States and the Europeans. But that's not what he's interested. I don't actually even think that he wants the money. I think it is more of a signaling and messaging, to make sure that the Ukrainian people who've been so brave put their arms down and give up and give in to what Putin wants.
It's a horrible. Donald Trump's on every front is horrible. There's nothing you can't go like, okay, everything is bad, but one thing is good. Nope, it's all bad, and that's the
Yeah, I mean,
guy.
and that's the whole thing, right? It's to
Right.
it's to create this chaos, this uncertainty, to settle the score. It was never really about, figuring out how to make America great, to help the American people. He hasn't done anything about pricing, and the
Uh-uh.
cost of living. Eggs are like crazy. In regards to pricing. Oil prices are rising. Gas prices are rising. We're seeing, there's still devastation in housing affordability, like everything. And then now we have this trauma and threats that we're dealing with every single day. And that is kind of, what these people have always been about. It's how do we inflict the most pain on people. It's never been about how do we give hope. It's never been about how do we, support anyone.
I couldn't agree more. Representative Omar, thank you so much for making time. Ramadan Mubarak is Ramadan's beginning. And I look forward to chatting with you in the future. And I really appreciate the info you gave us on the FAA because you had just been there. It really is very helpful.
I
So I really
appreciate it.
appreciate that.
Ramadan Mubarak. See you.
Take care, my friend. Talk to you soon.